What's going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, and today we are going to be doing probably the biggest video in Raid Shadow Legends that I've ever done before. Now, with that being said, we are going to be talking about the topic of tier lists. Now, just to cover all of the bases, just in case you don't know what tier lists are something that it's very popular in a lot of games, not just collector games, mobile games, but in pretty much every single game. This is something that I made with a lot of people a very long time ago, and things are always changing in this game, so I decided never to release it. But this is an example of a tier list. You kind of have the top tier, which would be SS in this particular case, and the bottom tier, which would be F. Now, this is something I was not able to find. Which person actually started making tier lists for this game, Raid Shadow Legends, and finally, why they kept on going after that. Now, the reason why those are two questions that I asked myself is, tier lists are, I don't want to say bad, but they're bad. They don't work for this game in particular, and I'm going to give you just a few of the incredible amount of reasons why they're bad for a game like this. Now, in a lot of games, there are very straightforward ways to actually build a champion. And one of the main reasons why tier lists are bad is because of pages like this, recommended artifacts. This actually doesn't exist in the game Raid Shadow Legends. There are so many different options, different gameplay that you can actually do within this game that having a recommended artifacts actually makes no sense. You could say and have a point where for newer players this can definitely help. Yes and no. The reason why I say yes and no is because yes, if you literally know nothing about the game, this can definitely get you on the right track. No, because if you spend zero effort on trying to understand how this game works, you're going to think this is recommended throughout the entirety of the game. Because I believe I've gone over this before. The social media aspect of the game, meaning Twitch, YouTube, Reddit, all of these things are a very small amount of the community itself. Most people will never ever go onto those platforms while playing the game Raid Shadow Legends. So that's just the way it is right now. There's a very small number, so it's really hard to use that as an arguing point. But if you do have those tools to your advantage, then you can absolutely make an argument there. So the first reason why tier lists make no sense in this game and actually end up doing more harm than good in this game is because every single champion is customizable, and you can literally adapt one champion that someone can say is terrible and make them actually amazing, and literally SS tier if you refer to my last picture there, based on the gear you use on them and the masteries you use on them. The second thing is, the first thing you'll notice about the last tier list I showed you is it was a compilation of single champion. Now let's think about that for a second. How can you make a tier list full of single champions when nothing in this game is single champion content? We have dungeons. This is for 5 people. Now we can skip ahead and go to faction wars. Once again, any stage, 5 people. Moving on to arena, where we have a little bit less at 4 people. And land boss, 5 people, doom tower, 5 people. You guys get the point. Campaign, I guess you can argue that is a 1-person content, but you really don't need a tier list for a campaign since the threshold is so low on what you actually need to get it done. So that's another huge reason why tier lists make no sense and actually do more harm than it does good for the community as a whole. Now, the question that stands is, why do people keep making tier lists? Now, I have seen some tier lists that have been made by people and not a single one is good. Just flat out, I'm sure effort went into it. There's no doubt about effort. However, the overall concept of a tier list, I'm really surprised a lot of these content creators missed that whole point in Raid Shadow Legends, where by them making that, regardless of how much effort they actually put into it, they're doing a disservice to the entire community by releasing that tier list. Because like I said, you cannot rate a single champion. You cannot do it. Everything in this game is based, literally everything in this single game is based off of synergy. There's no way to get around it. Synergy is king here, and there's going to be, I would love to get into a voice call with anyone who disagrees with that point, just to hear their side of it. I have yet to hear a strong argument on why tier lists make sense. Now, here's the tricky part. There is actually a way to make a tier list that does have the potential to help out the community in this game. The problem with it, and I've gone over this, it probably took me 5 months, literally 5 months of thinking about this on and off on how this could be done, and the amount of effort it would take to make a tier list that made sense for just one dungeon would be hours and hours and hours. Like, actually. And once again, I'm not trying to take away credit from anyone who's made a tier list. I don't really think they did it all by themselves. I'm assuming they had help, because one major part of a tier list is you actually have to play every single champion and test them thoroughly so you know what you're talking about when you put them on a tier list, which is why some people have came to me for account takeovers. They've had a champion in their vault, level 1 legendary, and I'm thinking, is there any particular reason why this legendary is level 1? And they more often than not say it's considered D on a tier list. And I'm here thinking to myself, you actually stunted your progress on getting through this game by actual months because of this mentality of tier list says it's here, that means it's here and it has no use on my account. Another thing you have to keep in mind for tier lists, this is ranking every single champion. Now, whose account has every single champion? My account definitely doesn't have every single champion, so it's highly unlikely that whoever's using a tier list has every single champion. If you only have what's considered F tier legendaries, it's more likely than not they are going to help you progress at an extremely fast rate compared to any other champions you have based on your account. And that's another big point about tier lists. A tier list in this game is assuming that every single account is the same, and it's the literal complete opposite of that fact. Every single account is different. They have different gear, different champions, different resources invested in those champions. So one champion without books can be, even if it's a good legendary, without books it could be an absolutely awful legendary where you have virtually no use for that champion. But if it says it's S tier, people are going to say, okay, it's S tier. Confirmed in my brain now, S tier, going to use it everywhere. Where the strategy could be actually, if you didn't use that champion and used an epic where you had them fully booked, you would actually do much better. So these are just, once again, very few points of the overwhelming amount of evidence on why tier lists are actually terrible to follow and use if you're actually serious about progressing through this game and doing it at a reasonable pace instead of constantly using things like this and setting yourself further and further back. And it's awful to see. Now, a question would be, why am I making this video? Now, tier lists actually help me out. A big part of my business as an influencer and full-time creator is I do account takeovers. Now, based on these tier lists, it's actually a gold mine for me. People are saying, Murder, I need to buy a takeover from you. I have these awesome champions and I can't figure out why I'm not doing well. The answer is literally because you're using a tier list that makes no sense for this game that someone irresponsibly put out and keeps pushing out onto players, making them suffer progression-wise. Now, I'm making this video because I don't care about the money. Making a video on tier lists always gets a lot of clicks. It's popular in others games, but it shouldn't be popular in Raid because it's more harmful than it is helpful, like I've said probably 100 times already. So, I care about people's success and players' success and also content quality. Now, as far as the creators go, you can do what you want. It's up to you, but I highly recommend you kind of take a step back and actually think about the content you're putting out. You do have viewers, you have people watching you, and to guide them in the wrong direction like this is, I don't think I have a word for it. I don't think I have a word that I would say that's not extremely disrespectful, so I'm just not going to say it at all. That's going to be pretty much where I'm coming from this. You making tier lists make me money. I should be happy, but I'm not, because my channel is about making sure that the entire community is on the right path. It's literally our job as content creators, not only to make money from what we're doing, but also to make people better in this game. The better people get in this game from watching you, the more people that will watch you, the more subs you'll get, the more views and the more money you'll make. And for me, I hate saying lack of effort, but it really seems like a lack of effort. Now, if you wanted to make a proper tier list, like I said, you would literally have to test every single champion. And once again, I can't think of a single person who's tested every single champion in this game, including myself. And you can definitely get a group of players who have tested out every single champion. Once again, that would be a very, very difficult argument to make for me personally. Having tested hundreds and hundreds of champions out, I can maybe think of 2 or 3 people together with myself that could make the perfect tier list for this game. And like I said, it would take hours and hours of work just to make one tier list for one single dungeon, because that's how you would actually have to do it. There can't be one overall tier list. It makes no sense. You would have to have a tier list for Spider Dungeon, a tier list for Dragon Dungeon, and there would be sub tier lists in all of that. That's the only way this would work. This is why I can't stress this enough. If you have a friend who's quoting a tier list, show them this video or memorize the points I'm saying in this video and try to guide them in the right direction, because I guarantee you they're digging themselves a grave in this game, and it's going to be very, very hard to get out unless they somehow overnight get an overwhelming amount of knowledge to this game where they don't have to rely on tier lists. A lot of top players don't ever have to use tier lists, and not even top players. Intellectual mid-game players and up, some of them will never need to use a tier list. They can simply read the kit, apply it directly to their account and say, this can help me or this cannot help me. There's a ton of players like that, and I'm very fortunate to have most of my viewers fall into that category. I worked hard to make sure my content allowed them to do so. And it's not just my content, they definitely gotten sources from other places, but that's my goal here, to make sure that people are as self-sufficient as possible, and me just giving them some basic tips and tricks along the way to help them come to those conclusions on their own. I don't want them to have to depend on anything that I put out here. Yes, it's nice for you to have something as a reference, but you shouldn't be depending on my content to make your gameplay and your account progression be that much better. And I guess this can be considered kind of my first rant video, and I felt it was necessary to do this because this is something I'm clearly passionate about, as you could see from me talking about this. The whole goal is to make sure you guys, as the viewers, as the audience, have all of the tools you need to succeed. And if I can provide any of those tools, I'm going to do that. And if I see any tools that are taking any of that from you, I'm going to go straight after it, correct the problem, let you guys know why it's a problem, and hopefully you understand and say, this sounds right, I've been wrong, and start spreading this message about tier lists. Now, if you're a content creator, maybe you can get upset by this video. Honestly, I don't care. Lots of people feel the same way about tier lists, and if you're an early game player and you've already been sucked into the whole tier list thing, honestly, I'm sorry. I wish other people did better, but it is what it is. And I guess there is the possibility that they didn't understand the damage they were doing, which is totally respectable. That I can definitely get behind. If you didn't understand how wrong and how harmful a tier list can be, and you've been pushing tier lists, calling something S tier, double S tier, F tier, and honestly didn't understand, instead of just trying to save yourself, if you really didn't understand that it was having an extreme negative impact on your viewers and how they view this game, I can get behind that. But if you can't, if you're doing it because you know it gets views, I honestly have no sympathy for that, and I'm hoping this video really sheds some light on this information and makes people work harder if they really want to push out something like this that's going to actually be beneficial for the game. So now what I want to ask you guys as the viewers is, what do you guys think? What were your initial impressions on tier lists before anything I said here? Because that's something I am interested to see what your guys' view on tier lists are. Is it something you followed religiously? Have you always taken it with a grain of salt and always compared it to your account first? This is something that I want to know because I've never looked at a tier list for any single game, because I've played quite a few competitive games and know that tier lists, even when they do work in a game, it really only appeals to the very casual player base, and there are, I don't even want to say anomalies because the number is actually a lot higher, but the percentiles of people that it actually applies to is a very, very casual percentile, and that's totally different than raid. It actually applies to no one beneficially. But I do want to get your guys' feedback in the comments. What do you think about tier lists? And like I said, please, if you see someone talking about a champion, having someone say this champion's bad because it's listed bad in a tier list, or if you say cite your source of why you think this champion's bad, if they link you to a tier list, please bring up this argument to them. And if you have to, show them this video, because it's really important that people understand how good a champion is, and how good a champion isn't has nothing to do with what you read on a piece of paper ranked S through F. It literally has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the knowledge you have of the game, what your account looks like, and the resources you have invested in those champions. So that's going to conclude my video. I plan on doing a lot more videos like this because we do have an overwhelming problem of people being rather careless with the content they push out. It's not just tier lists. There are many, many more things, whether they're doing champion spotlight videos, whether they're doing gearing videos, and a lot of the information is incorrect. And we are going to be correcting that, making sure they're trying hard, not just pushing stuff out to get money. Like I said, I respect the grind. This job isn't hard, despite what people think. There is nothing hard about being a content creator. It takes work like many other jobs, but any other 9-to-5 job, you actually have to do a ton of more work than I actually have to do as a content creator. So I really don't like that argument as well, which I've heard quite a few times already. So as always, guys, thanks a bunch for watching this video. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe, smash that like button, and I will see you all in my next upload.